Okay, it is 8:31 and it is Wednesday, um, May the 13th, 2020. And welcome to Introduction to Criminal Law. Um, those who are on the call already know my name, but for those who will um, join in later or either will look at the recording, my name is Richard Wright, and today I'm going to take a little extra time and we're going to go over the expectations for this course. This video that I'm doing today is key to success for the next 5.5 weeks because I'm going to give you my expectations. It's called an open house. And I'm going to just briefly talk about what chapter one or week one would be like that you have to do for your assignments. There's a little bit difference in week one's discussion posts that you will not see until you get to week uh, 6, or the last week, should I say, of this class. But actually, I'll just go forth and then you'll see what I'm talking about. Some of this will be repetitious to you. All right. So just hang in there. All right. I see two of my former students in other classes I've had. Um, welcome, um, Kara and um, Brother Pastor Presley. Also, welcome also to class. And you guys know me from drugs and crime, and I think, or um, introduction to corrections. So this is usually people take this course and J250 together, drugs and crime. So anyway, so you see my name and my information here. And again, this is going to be repetitious for some of you, not because you're repeating the class, but because you've had me in other classes. Um, I have my name there, I have my phone number, and I say this line in here, and it means what it says. And those of you who are in here already know, students can feel free to call me, text me, email me any hour of the day, except the 25th hour of the day. If you text me, call me any hour of the day, except the 25th hour, I will get it and I will respond accordingly. But if you do it the 25th hour of the day, I won't get it. I'm not say might. I definitely won't. You can figure that one out yourself. And then the other thing is, if you text me, please do two things. One, identify yourself in the text to me. And then number two, please tell me the course and the assignment that you're talking about, because I don't keep phone numbers in my phone of most of my students, just a few. Some people I do other things with, and so I try to make sure that we keep abreast on those other activities, like us pastors. And so anyway, the thing is, I'm able to be reached. I have never had a comment made except by one or two students that said they could not reach me. And then the school came back in kind and said that is not true. They know what my position is and status is. And I've been like this for years. The other thing that is important is rubrics. Rubrics, 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 rubrics. If you follow the rubrics, you will get what's in the module. And if you pay attention to what I say in the lectures with the rubrics, and then the PowerPoints that I send out each week, each of you um, should get the PowerPoints. I don't think I sent them out yet for this week, but I will send them out after this lecture is over. And the PowerPoints each week will correspond with the chapters that you're reading. I don't use the PowerPoints during the lectures because that's repetitious. You can read those yourself. And because of the fact that I usually include a lot of professional experience that I've had as a lawyer and the expertise down through the years I've had as a lawyer. And so you won't necessarily see me using the PowerPoints. They are good study tools. I also add additional information in there that you can use to help you as well. One student one time says, "You gave me the PowerPoints and then you gave me all this other stuff to read." I says, "No, I gave it to you to help you if you wanted to better understand the module." Remember, 5.5 goes very, very, very fast because this course will actually end on the 19th of June. So before you know it, we'll be done. And then APA, I'm very dogmatic about that, very serious about APA because of the aspects of um, professionalism and academic integrity. I will share a video with you in a few that explain to you why. Cite your sources properly in the body of the paper. Provide reference page appropriately based on APA. You have a lot of systems to help you in this school. And as a matter of fact, to the left of where I am right now is APA assistance. And so you have this to help you. We also have tutors who can help you with APA. Very, very, very important. And then make sure you have a cover page, properly formatted, spelling, and those are the things that you pretty much need. Okay. And then critical thinking, which is one of our transferable skills, which is one of the skills that we've identified that employers want students to have. And so we want you to be critical thinkers. I have a video in here that helps you with critical thinking if you don't know what that is. Also, I believe there's a course that you guys either have taken or will take concerning critical thinking. Critical thinking is essential in terms of becoming the cream of the crop and being able to be successful in climbing to success. I'm a natural critical thinker because I went to law school. I learned what we call the Socratic method, which is a method that is sometimes I'll throw it at you because I'll ask questions and then you'll answer, and then I'll ask another question. And the point of the matter is what it does is it eventually triggers a light bulb to come on up here, and then the answer will flow out. And this is what you're going to have to do when you are a professional out there in criminal justice or any other field, but specifically we're focusing on criminal justice. And then the other thing I want to remind you is run your papers through Grammarly. Each of you should be aware that you have a Grammarly account that the school has provided for you. And in the resources tab, which I'll share with you in a few minutes, you'll see about that. But I run every one of your papers except the discussion posts through Grammarly. And if you're 25% above 25%, you will get what I call a Grammarly hit, which means that you will lose that accordingly, whatever that percentage of the point is. So let's say if you're 100 points for an assignment and you have a 30%, then you're going to end up possibly, if you met all the other requirements, with a 70. So you'll lose 30% of your grade. And I also am obligated to submit it to the dean for your campus through a system that we have as instructors, and they will eventually. Sometimes, if you get too many of them, you'll get put out of class. If you get way too many, then you may get put out of school. And it's not to be tough on you. It's again helping you to be able to apply more critical thinking, because we don't want people who can just research and copy and paste and take material. We don't want that. And anybody can do that. We want you to analyze it, critique it. We want you to provide and make it you. Okay. So very important. Additional course information that you won't see in the rubrics, but you should be aware of this. And again, I don't say it throughout the whole school year, but this is in bold caps, and you'll see it here. You'll see it in the syllabus. You must conduct research. That means the sole source of your papers should not be the text. And in fact, I encourage students to not rely as much on the text, because the text is for your studying and reading for information. But the key that we want you to do is to be able to provide what we call credible information or information literacy. We want you to be literate in being able to find information. That too is one of our critical skills. And we will talk about that very briefly tonight. So you'll lose 2 points if I see that. That also includes the module, by the way. Same thing, module or textbook, because of the fact that we want you to research. And it actually says it in the assignments in a place. I'll show it to you. And then I already talked about APA, a cover sheet. You'll lose a point if you don't have that. And then these are some sources that can help you along the way. Tutoring is very important if you need it. By the way, tutoring is not just for people who are having trouble. It's something that can benefit you also throughout the course. Going beyond the textbook, this is a PDF that if you click on it, which I'll just show you just how they work, and you'll see it right here. And these are some writing tips promoting critical thinking. This helps you and what to do, getting out of your comfort zone. And then, it helps you in terms of being able to do that. These are little articles that I include. Most professors don't. And I have various ones. Analytical tips, which works in conjunction with information literacy. That goes with what I talked about a few minutes ago, research. References for criminal justice students. A lot of times you end up having to cite various sources, and APA. We talk about now the 6th standard APA. We're moving to 7, but at this particular point, don't worry about which one we're using. The running head thing is not really major anymore. Some students are happy about that. In-text citations go in after the sentence in which the scholarly literature is used. So some examples are Smith and Jones 216 stated that using reference adds credibility to the academic essays. I say that all the time. And you can put it or either at the end. So you could referencing is a critical part. That's the page that you get all of the sources from, and examples of APA style. All of that's in here as well. Again, these are tools for you. Don't worry about the annotated bibliography. Again, here's the video that you can copy and paste regarding critical thinking. And rubrics are located in each written assignment. I also generally will let you know about how rubrics operate as well in the course of this class. Then there's a discussion post. Those are the easiest rubrics to follow. The key thing that I want you to is follow what it says in the weekly module for the rubric assignment, that's for the discussion post assignment, and give some details. Don't just give me a one-liner. And then citations and references are welcome, but not required, people. I do appreciate it when students submit more than more than two discussion posts, because you're required to submit an initial post. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And then this is the schedule for our live sessions. Tonight, we'll go to around 10 o'clock. And the reason is because I usually try to spend the last half an hour talking about myself and my motto. You'll get that. And you two who are in here already know it, others may not. So weeks 2 starting actually Tuesday. So don't get to the point of saying, oh, our lecture next one is going to be Wednesday, the 20th. No, it's going to be Tuesday, the 19th. And every Tuesday after that until we finish the course. You must attend the lectures or listen to the archive. And I'll give you a keyword or phrase. You'll be required to provide that if you do not attend the lecture. Now, I always recommend the students to do it like right after the lecture if you're in it. That way you can get it out of the way and you get your points right away. And that's how I keep record of people who saw the lecture. Now, I've been kind of flexible with the due date for the recorded phrase, which is Sunday. Um, but I try not to be too flexible. So I had a few students who had situations that allowed them to do weeks after. However, generally that's not the case because of the late policy. Anyway, recordings will be emailed to you, and you don't have to worry about WebEx. Once you get the recording, it's going to be converted to YouTube, and it will be posted in this section under recordings that you can come and click, copy and paste it, and then I will also in kind email it to you to your course mail as well. Okay, so APA assistance, this is what I was talking about earlier, and if you click on this guys, you can open it and then it'll tell you all about where you can find help with APA, how to prevent plagiarism. There's videos in here. There's tools that properly have you teach you how to format your cover page and your reference page. Don't worry about the annotated bibliography. Writing in APA style is an important part also. So you have that right there in the on the cover page. So I put that over there for you, along with explaining the writing process and the steps that generally and how it works and how you can be successful at that as well. Okay, so I'm going to, before I get to the announcements, I want to take you to, and let me move this over a little bit. I want to take you to the resources tab, and I want to do a few things. Number one, this is where you find the information I talked about regarding Grammarly. See, there's a link there, and if you click on these blue links, you'll be able to utilize this to deal with spelling and plagiarism. But you have to check the box for plagiarism. It won't automatically do that. And you need to see, and again, you want to get under 25%, 5%, or 26% and above, you're in trouble. You'll lose your points. All right. And then there's other information in here as well, how you can make an appointment to see a librarian if you need it. And then also, there are things that are career services and the transferable skills. Now, I'm going to talk about the transferable skills after this right here. Let's move this over some more. One of the learning and the learning center dean, the head, is John Malatic, and that's who you're going to see in this video. And I'm going to take off my headphones this video as well. It cuts off in this version, but if you want to go back and you can yourself, you can go back and look at it. But I want you to pay close attention to this. You'll hear some stuff that you've already heard me say in here.
Integrity is making decisions in your academic life that are based on honesty, trust, fairness, responsibility, and respect. This means being honest in the work you do, while respecting the work that others do. Cheating means distributing or receiving answers and information that means other means expressly in your consent, rather than struggle. Examples of cheating are asking other students for answers or copying answers during tests, using notes, purchasing papers from websites or web sources.
Like Course Hero.
Always ask your professor if it's okay to use notes in your test or to work together with classmates on assignment locations. Using another individual's work without giving them credit or taking the other person's work. Examples of plagiarism are taking an assignment to get someone else's work. Having laboratory ideas from someone else. Asking about without having the original evidence. Finding different theoretic facts and cultures and books. Reduces the losses of learning analysis, which students may feel embarrassed inside of the credit. Not just about getting learning evidence. It's possible to plagiarize images, graphs, coding, and data as well. Citing other sources, often the Bible will text sentences and references. Everyone who is well in some of those email knows that this will solve that source of that information. Integrity in the workplace starts with good practices and skills built around what students. Which is different.
Okay, let me put this back in. And okay, so two things. Attention to what he said. He talked about how to avoid plagiarism. In addition to what he said, one of the ways is more critical thinking in your papers that I've already shared with you. And again, the importance is that when you take a test or quiz, you will abide by the academic integrity policy of the school, which means you shouldn't have sticky notes or legal pads on your desk with things that you can utilize for the test. That is like if you were in school in a classroom physically taking the test, you know how you would take your books and put them either in the desk or under the desk. The bottom line is you're doing the same thing when you take tests, quizzes, and exams at home as well. And those are a couple important points. And you can always look at this and you'll learn that it is very, very, very important. As I say, academic integrity is critical because if you're a student who is not um, student of integrity, then you will be an adult of lack of integrity as well. Okay. So then this is the critical thinking aspects of it. And then actually, I didn't really want to click on this one because that's the one that's more detailed if you want to click on each one and learn more detail. I just want to give you a general understanding about critical thinking, digital fluency, and oops, let me get that out the way. I want to move. Oops, I kicked us out of class. Okay, let's go back in. This is what I see for all the classes that I teach. So let's go back and let's go back to resources. Okay, now let's go down here and let's go to critical. Okay, I want to move this. Okay, let's move that down here for now. So transferable skills, you'll discover there's 6 transferable skills. Now, you should be aware that you should be able to identify each of these skills as you complete your assignments throughout this course to develop the ability to be able to be successful as not only a student, but as a professional when you operate. And 3 critical skills are individualized. And these are the first 3 that I'm going to talk about. Which one is critical thinking? I've already talked about that in detail. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. So you're going to make sure that you understand that you'll be able to identify each of these in your assignments. Also, by the way, that's where your assignments are written as well with these transferable skills in mind. Now, not only adopted by colleges, but now employers have let us know as well. Digital fluency, understanding how to use digital tools. You should be aware of the fact that digital tools pretty much run the world. You see this thing in my hand. You got one of these. Some of you have an Apple, that's an Android, and your phones are full of apps, short for applications, that allow you to have everything from your textbooks to your Word documents, just a whole myriad of things in there. And so digital fluency is very, very, very important because you're going to use that in the future as a professional. Information literacy, recognizing when information is needed and the ability to locate, evaluate, and effectively use needed material that is credible. Information literacy tells you this: never use Wikipedia as a source in any of your assignments in my class. Now, some professors might allow it, but the reason why we don't allow it, those of us who do tell you not to use it, is because it's a word-based system and anybody could go and change it. Yeah, they have some good information. However, I don't use it. I might glance at something real quick for like a case number or something like that, but I'm not going to use it for a source in my papers or in my academic papers, because there's some possibility someone could have tampered with them. So if you identify these 3, these are 3 things that the individual, okay, does themselves. critical thinking, digital fluency, and information literacy. The next three are for communicating with others, for reaching others. This communication is the alpha and the omega, which is Greek, and you'll see it in the Bible. It means the beginning and the end. It's the A to Z thing that we must be able to do. We must be able to um, be proficient in written and oral communication and understanding some nonverbal language, such as this side to side. I don't care, almost anywhere you go, it almost means no. If you go up and down, that generally means yes. If you do this, it might mean okay, and it might mean some other things. But the point of the matter is you learn how to communicate. You also be aware of the fact that you're going to communicate with people from various backgrounds, cultures, people who speak different languages, and you're going to be able to reach out to them as well. So communication is very, 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 very important. Diversity and teamwork. Let's talk about diversity first. People are from various backgrounds. Our country is made up out of people from all over the world, as well as the world is made up of people from all over various places and languages and dialects and religious beliefs, sexual preferences, and various things. So what we have learned in this school, and I am part of what we call diversity and inclusion committee. In fact, I'm on a team where we have a one book that we're using. It's a book right here I'm holding up in my hands. You can't maybe see the title, but it's called Blind Spot: Hidden Biases of Good People. And so we're going through this book as faculty and discussing it among ourselves. So what I am saying is that we're committed to diversity. We have diversity in faculty, administration, and our student population is diverse as well. And so we learn to operate empathetically with each other and understanding that people have differences. When a person, for example, express a position in their post that I might not agree with, I can be empathetic, but I can also share my ideas. I don't shoot them down, and I don't want any person to feel uncomfortable about anything. Then we work as a team in school, in class. In this class, we work as a team because I am the coach and you are the players, and you each hold your own in terms of the things that you learn and apply. If we had enough participation in the live lectures, I would break people up into units and have them to do various things and maybe even comment, but it doesn't work very well like that, unfortunately. If I was in the classroom, I would definitely do that. But you need to understand that teamwork is very important for you to learn. And one of the ways that you do teamwork in this class is through your discussion posts, where you collaborate with each other and pay attention to the views of someone else in a reply post. Your initial post generally is your own thought and things like that. So we work as a team, and I always remind my students all year long that I'm not this guy that's up here with all this knowledge. I'm here as a mentor, here to partake of knowledge from you guys. There are things that some of my students can teach me. For example, I have introduction to corrections. I've had several students who were correction officers who are able to give me some perspectives from the current workforce, so, which is awesome. And so diversity and teamwork, those are two of our transferable skills as well. Ethics and professional responsibility. Ethics is so important that you must operate professionally and for the greater good. of the world and workplace. Understand applying ethical and professional principles, such as what we talked about, the academic integrity, and then understanding from the ethics course that you take here. I used to teach a course called Ethics in Criminal Justice that was geared directly towards criminal justice professionals. They took that course away. I hope one day they bring it back in some form or another, because there's some specific ethical issues that relate to individuals who are criminal justice um, professionals, and we want to make sure to share those with you. Professional responsibility, every area has what we call a code of conduct. As a lawyer, I had a code of conduct. As a professor, I have a code of conduct that, for example, I might have a student that asks me, for example, can I have um, the information from the test that I took uh, on what I got wrong? And I will tell them I can't do that because there are other students who are going to take this test. And also, you should be aware that in the next course, we might have some of the same materials in there, and we don't want to have uh, a student to develop what we call a cheat sheet. So it deals with the integrity of the class. And so it's important that you understand that I'm going to always opt on the ethical side. Also, when it gets to the point that we start talking about issues that are affecting you as a student, that you're also going to be truthful. For example, if you lost someone, you don't have to give me an obituary. If you're sick, you don't have to give me a note from the doctor. We're in college, okay? We don't do that here. We believe you. We believe that you are telling the truth. And we also tell people that eventually those things will catch up with you, and you find out in those situations. So, um, and those are the transferable skills that we use here at Rasmussen, that we want you to become proficient at. And like I said, you can learn more about it by going to the guide section here. And you can also go back to um, looking at, go back to the, let's see, your resources. You can go back to the resources page, and then you see where I got that. And then you can click on each one, and then it will give you specifics about each of the six if you have an opportunity or have a desire or need. Okay, so that's it under the resources tab. All right, so let me move this back up here. And any questions about anything so far? If so, you can type yes in the chat box or no. Uh, any questions? Type yes or no. Okay, and no. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Can you hear a horn blowing in the background? Can you guys hear a horn blowing in the background? Can you? No? Oh, okay, good. Because I hear it. But I guess because I'm on a microphone, you can not hear as much. So, yeah. I've had to move my office to working at this level in my house because the basement where my office is, we had a flood down there, um, and this happened a few weeks ago. So they're still they tore up my carpet and all of that. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff down there doing. So I'm up in our loft area. All right, so that's our resources tab. So let's go back. All right. So now, before we get to the announcement, week one, let's go over the welcome announcement. Those of you who receive this. This will be available the whole time. Pay close attention to each of these highlighted points. Check the announcements, because the announcements, I provide information that's very important to the assignments and to updated news or things of that nature. And Student Lounge, take time to put a little introduction. That's when we have a chance to see each other. You see mine in there, which I give information about, little information about myself and my family. And then your course mail, that's where you see on the left side, course messages, and you click on that, and that's how you get your emails that I send you that are in the classroom. And then we're going to talk about the syllabus in a few minutes. The course calendar we're going to talk about. General course questions is a place under the discussion tab that allow you to put a question that you want anyone to answer, not personal stuff. If you're going to do that, send that to me in the course mail addressed to me. And then the resources, we already talked about that. Report tab is something I don't use. That's how you get access to your grade book. And then these are some tools or sources that we've already kind of talked about. And then this, again, is the schedule for this week, okay? So you'll see that the entire time, all right? So now, before we get to week 1 announcement, let's take a look at the syllabus. Syllabus has my information in it. This is basically the contract to the course, and it shares the information I told you earlier as in my instructor note. Tells you about the text, a brief introduction to criminal law, which you guys have access to as an ebook. And then it talks about the course requirement, and it tells how class starts. This is term 2. So tells when assignments are due. That's Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, and the last day of class for the final week. All right. So it tells you also down here about your discussion post. Now, notice this, that in your week 1, in term 2, your discussion posts are due Saturday at midnight for your initial post and reply post. You're going to see that when we get to the calendar. That is the exception till you get to week 5. Other than that, it's going to be weeks 2 through 5, Tuesday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then reply posts are Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, be sure that you deal with APA. We've already talked about that in the resources tab. These are the things that you will be doing: readings, your discussion posts. Remember to provide detailed information in your discussion posts, professional when responding to each other's and with the respect that we talked about earlier. Each module contains some type of activities to support the content. These are practice activities to help you, and I'll share those with you. Written assignments, you'll have your written assignments, and then you'll have 2 quizzes. Now, in this course, you will know this. There are 2 quizzes. One is in week 3, and the other one is in week 6. Those are what we call midterm and final. The quiz for week 3 cover the first section of the course, modules 1 to 3. So it's not going to be a comprehensive quiz for the second one. It's going to cover the last. That's one of the things that's rare, but that's what they do in this course. All right. You have 1 time to take the quiz, And that one time, that if you took Introduction to Correction, since it's been a 5.5 course, it gives you 3, but we don't do that with this. And so I highly recommend taking quizzes near the end of the week after you've gone through the material. And then your live classrooms, which is what we're in now. Okay, so now the goal here is to get 500 points. You get 90 points for your discussion, 200 points for your written assignments, 180 for quizzes. Look how much of it. 380 is quizzes. Remember, there's only 2. So you get 90 points for each one. All right. And then your live lectures, you get 5 points for each of the 6 weeks that you are in live lectures. And that adds up to 500. Okay. So now, with this grading scale, I operate on the basis of all the way down to B minus. Do not ask me, do not text me, do not ask me to calculate what it takes for you to get a C or below. I won't answer you. I refuse, because my goal is to produce A and B students. And that's what I specialize in, and that's what I work hard to do. That equals what we call the honor roll and dean's list. So you ought to target yourself in this particular course to get no lower than an 80 percentile and try to get up to 100. I've had a few students who've actually gone through the whole course and gotten 100%. And that's because they got their assignments in on time, or if they had extenuating circumstances, they were such that we'll talk about that in a minute. But the point of the matter is that they followed the rubric, people, they listened to the lectures, they read the materials, and they did well. Okay. So don't ask me about this. Some people get to right to week 5 and they want to know, what do I need to do to get this? I'm not telling you. And then these are things that I do. And we already talked about the transferable skills and the attendance policy. You can take a look at that on your own. I want to talk about the late assignment policy, because your late assignment policy is across the board. The school sets it, is that you lose 10% for each day that your assignments are late. Now, that doesn't apply to discussion posts. I'll explain my process for discussion posts in just a minute. But for all your written assignments and for your quizzes, then you get 10% knocked off for every day that it's late. And it goes all the way up to 7 days, it says. Now, be aware that I wouldn't get comfortable with that 7-day thing, because by the time you get to day 3, you're at 70. Day 4, you're at 60, and that's D. You know, so day 5, then you fail, because that's a 50. So the point of the matter is that you need to get your assignments in on time. Okay. Now, before I talk about discussions, I want to talk about this line here. Instructors may waive the late penalty in the case of extenuating circumstances. Now, extenuating circumstances are determined on a case-by-case basis. There's a number of factors that we take into consideration when we deal with extenuating circumstances. Major catastrophes, things that affect you, will be considered as extenuating circumstances. How do I know if you have an extenuating circumstance? Somebody in this class want to tell me, how do I know if you have an extenuating circumstance? How do I know? By word. There we go. By word, and we will tell you. That's right. You have to tell me. And you let me know. And I gave you the modes for how to tell me. Again, I talk to my students on the phone. Don't I, Brother Brian? And I don't have short conversations. I have conversations to help you, and then I go into my mode as instructor to help you. The key thing is communication with me, letting me know. I'm not going to, just because your assignments aren't in, I'm not going to assume, oh, you got a problem. Yeah, you do have a problem. The problem is you're getting zeros. Now, let me say this to you so you'll be aware. Every Monday after assignments are due, I go through and I do what we call a scrub. And the school wants me to do this for the advisors to make sure that if you have not turned in your assignments, I put in zeros. All right. Now, some students equate that to saying, oh, well, no need of doing it. I got a zero. That means that also should be something to say, oh, I missed doing this. I need to get this done. Students all the time ask me on Monday after the assignments are due for that Sunday, can I still submit it? The answer is yes. You know what the late assignment policy is. I already gave it to you. The question is a lot of times after the 7 days, the question is, can you, or is it worth really submitting? And if you don't have an extenuating circumstance, then your zero is gonna stay. So the point of the matter is that it's not a final grade. Okay, I can always fix that. But extenuating circumstances, let me know. Let me know. Okay. Now, regarding discussion posts, let me say this to you. They conclude at the end of the week, which means discussion posts are due generally on initially on Tuesday and reply on Saturday, with the exception of first week. They're both due on Saturday. Sunday, the form is over. Now, if you submit a post Sunday, one of two things will happen. If your initial post was submitted late, but by Saturday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, and you submit a reply post that Sunday, you will lose a point. And that's something that I do. I technically could say no, that I don't give you any points for it, but you'll get a point, and that's how I work. Now, some students have not understood that and tried to submit both initial post and reply post the Sunday after. No deal. And they'll come back and say, well, my computer wasn't working. I'm sorry, I can't help you, because the purpose for the discussion forum is the week that the class is in, so that we as student and faculty can interact with the topic for that week. After that, it's over. The other thing I want to say to you about discussion posts is each day that your discussion posts are late, you'll lose 1 point. Okay, as well. Now, it does that this week, it doesn't really have that, because if you submit your discussion post and initial post on Sunday, you're getting zeros. Okay, period. Don't come and tell me, say, well, Professor, I thought, no, you didn't listen to what I said in the lecture. It's very, very, very important. And then don't next week come and say, okay, I thought all my discussion posts were both due on Saturday, and then your initial post is going to be due starting with week 2 on that Tuesday at 59 p.m. Central Standard, and you're going to lose points all the way up to Saturday. So it's all clear what I'm saying about discussion posts. I've already explained the parameters. Disregard the language where it says in certain cases, such as labs and exams, we don't have that. Completed at designated time. It can be made up. I can give you another activity. I don't do that. I don't have enough time to do that. I have way too many students. So And then finally, the last thing, in no circumstances may a student submit work after the last day of the academic term unless an incomplete grade has been requested and granted beforehand. That's all I'm going to ever say about that. I'm not going to help you with that. There are students who have come to me and they've tried to use language different, but it's right here. And then also the incomplete grade policy is down here as well. So I don't go over that. So the academic integrity policy speaks for itself, dealing with cheating, collusion, destruction, fabrication, forgery, plagiarism. We kind of talked about that. And so it's something that you agree to abide by. And that's your syllabus. Okay. So now let's take a look quickly at the course calendar. Okay, the course calendar. And I got to take out the demo for domestic violence. Okay, and what else I got to take out? I got to take out drugs and crime. Okay, so now it's no longer showing on this calendar. So here's where we are right now. You see each of these lines, that's just not it. You click on it and it opens up and it gives you more details. Okay, and that's how it works. Like our live lectures. Okay, now notice here, your initial post and reply posts are both due this Saturday the 16th. All right, after that, you'll see just the reply posts are due. But that's because normally they're due Tuesday. The reason why we don't do Tuesday this week is because today is Wednesday, the first day of class in term 2 classes. So we couldn't possibly require that you post Tuesday because you'd be late because class didn't start until a day later. So the school has a policy that sets it out for this as the week 1 exception. So then, because even though you're short, your written assignments are still going to be due Sunday. Okay. And then we go back to Monday next week for week 2. And then you see that your lecture takes place and you'll see it all the way down on Tuesdays after that. Okay. That's your calendar. I do always every week take you to the end, the 19th. That's a Friday. Okay. That's the exception to number 2 about when your reply posts are due on that Friday as opposed to that Saturday. Anything you submit after the 19th falls on parameters of after the course is over and you will not get it graded. Even if it's 12 o'clock, I can't do it. Okay, so you know well in advance. And that's your course calendar. I recommend you always have access to it. Some people can copy it, but you always have access to it throughout the whole course. And I have it all the way from beginning to the end. If I make some changes to the course calendar, I will, in kind, submit an announcement to that effect. So that's where you can find your due dates as well as in the assignments themselves. All right, let me close the course tools. So now let's go back to course home because we're getting near the end of the time here. So here's your announcement. Each week you'll see an announcement and it tells you what the topic is for that week. That's how you know, in addition to the module, but your week 1 announcement tells you. Sometimes you'll have more than one announcement. I'll post a special announcement. And so this week, Crime and the Constitution, you'll go over that material. Chapters 1 and 2 of the textbook. Again, I will send you the PowerPoints and additional information after the session today. And it tells you these activities, types of law, what is a crime, the 4th Amendment, probable cause, key terms, and practice for elements of offense, and then a practice quiz. These are things that you're going to see each week, these types of things to help you with the module. This tells you when our lectures take place, which is taking place right now. Gives the link also there. The discussion assignment, repeating what I said earlier on showing your course calendar. Topic, police dogs and warrantless searches. Initial post is due Saturday. Reply post Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. And then the written assignment, elements of criminal law. Now, these are the things that I want you to make sure that you follow. We're going to go, I'll show you what the rubrics and all of that are for this. And then this tells you about the open house. The final thing in this announcement is adversity is the springboard to success. Some of those of you who are here now know what it's about, but I'm going to be sharing at the end about it. So I'm trying to get to that as quickly as I can. So now let's go to week 1 module. I'm only going to spend just a few minutes on that because we're a couple minutes behind schedule. So each week I will go over the assignments. Okay, your discussion posts are written right here, and you're going to use the information in here. And then for your reply post, you're going to use another student's post. All right, so it's important. Now, to help you in this course, we have the guides for justice studies, criminal law that can help you as well. If you click on that, there it is. And this was designed for this course. You see that this is the section here. We got one for domestic violence. By the way, domestic violence, I'm helping to write that course for the summer. So when you ever that course, you may have me, but you'll see my fingerprints on it because I'll be helping to write that. And then there's a tabs that help you with your weekly assignments, Grammarly, the things that we talked about earlier as well. So built within the assignments is something, a guide to help you. So your written assignment, elements of criminal law. There are 3 scenarios. Okay. Each scenario should be a minimum of 1 page, not counting the cover page and the reference page. There should be citations in the body of each one for each of these scenarios. And make sure you distinguish. Don't just run them together. There are students who have, and then it's hard for me to tell. And I will grade you accordingly based upon this. Now, there's that guides again that's there to help you. Again, it's all over the place there, so you have no excuse. Now, if you click on the assignment, it opens up. It tells you the due date, and then it tells you the rubric. So see the rubric? You just click on this. All right. So this explains what you need to get 10 points in section 1, scenario 2, 3. And then the grammar, spelling, and make sure it meets the 3-page minimum requirements. This should be a page, this should be a page, this should be a page. Double space, people. I said that. That's how APA operates though. And then this is standard. You'll see this every week. No, it says no Wikipedia. We already talked about that, but it talks about citations and references and things of that nature. And that's the assignment for week 1. All right. Then you go down further and then you'll see the live classroom lecture, which is what we're in now. Of course, that is also due the 17th, which is Sunday. Okay. Any questions about week 1 assignment? Okay, great. All right. I try to take time to break it down. I break it down more in other weeks, but because of what we got to do, I try to just give you a summary. Now, the stuff I'm giving you now helps you to understand each week how we roll in this class. So we deal with in the concept of what I'm doing, I'm going to cover all these objectives, but not today. Okay. But you will cover them by your assignments. Type of law, what is crime, Fourth Amendment, probable cause, key terms. When you get to these things here, it says key terms, and then when it says for practice, it means what it says to help you get ready for your quiz, which will take place week 3. All right. And when you get ready to come back and get ready, you might use those as study tools. And so then you go over it and read this. I would lecture on it, but I'm not going to do it today. Then you click next, and then it takes you to the next, and then it goes next, next, all the way until you go back to the beginning. Okay, so that's for you. What is a crime? Classifications of crime. They are divided primarily, the main two are these. Does anybody know what the definition of a misdemeanor is off the top of their head? And how do you know if a crime is a misdemeanor or a felony? How do you know if it's a misdemeanor? Okay, the level of the charge doesn't tell me that. That's not the answer. There's something else. That's a good try, but that's not it. What else? Uh, that's kind of the long way of saying the sentence. So yes, it's based on the sentence. If you look at the definition here, any offense that is punishable by fine and less than 1 year in jail, generally jail is a misdemeanor and are less serious offenses. Felonies punishable by a fine and or more than a year, and those are usually served in prison. Okay. Infractions, you don't worry too much about it, but you will run across this on the quiz. I will say this. Non-criminal offenses such as traffic, I don't know why that's in there. Oh, I know why that's in there. I don't know why that, oh, I know why, because I didn't turn off my Skype thing. But anyway, that was my dean's face that popped up. Not that he's in the class, but that the system does that. Anyway, citations for speeding and things like that, those are infractions. Those are not misdemeanors or felonies, unless you get into things like DUIs or things of that nature. All right. Then jails versus prison, we kind of hit on that. The Fourth Amendment, probable cause, and things like that. We won't deal with that today. You will discover plain view exception if you take my constitutional law class, which I'm teaching it still. Next week it completes. That's a bachelor class, so you won't get that in associates. And then we deal with more details of these things, so you can take a look at those. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me about them. Now, these are things that that help you. Key terms. Don't forsake these. This is like a game, but it helps you. Notice this activity will help you prepare for quizzes and written assignments, so don't skip them. And this is how it works. You skip on, you click on this, and it opens up. Use the flashcards. That's the one that works. And then you have to run Adobe, then allow it. Then you have questions, forms that are often used by police departments to demonstrate that a person knowingly, willingly, and voluntarily granted consent to search. So the answer to the question is written consent. You flip the card. Okay. Then you go to the next one. You can do that. A serious criminal act that is punishable by a fine and or more than 1 year. What is that? What is that? Hmm. There it is. So those are things that can help you. I'm not going to go through each of these. So you see the value of doing those right there. All right. So let's get out of this. Now let's go down to the next thing. Practice elements of an offense. Again, same thing. And you will go over these, start the activity, and then click the element below that is not. You got to make sure you pay attention to what the questions ask. That's how you do on tests. An element of armed robbery. Okay. Which one is not an element of armed robbery? Intentionally entering a dwelling, taking property with force. Which one do you think? Or you may know. Okay. Let's submit it. Survey says yes. Yes. And so you will learn this more when you do your reading. And so that's how those work. And I'm not going to go over each of these elements. The elements of simple battery by selecting the correct answer. And so you'll go through and you pick these and then you submit them. So that's another thing that helps you. And these are things that we will do in class, but this week we won't go in detail. And then classifications, same thing. Okay, so you start the activity and then you connect the one. Um, so which of these is a felony? Which of these is a misdemeanor? And then this one is an infraction because you get a ticket for that. So let's see if it's right. And it tells you. And then by the way, if you didn't get them right, it will tell you too. So anyway, that's that. And then the last one is this. The quiz. This is actually, let me just say this to you. These questions are so similar to what's on the quiz because I know what the quiz looks like already. No, I will not show it to you. So, you know, I know what's in your mind already. Can we see it? No. What are codified misdemeanors and felony known as? Yep, there it is. All right, so let's do one more and then we're done. The Fourth Amendment is an example of what type of law? Come on, come on, come on. You know. Yeah. And then so anyway, so those are the kinds of things that, and you know what, you look at them and says, oh yeah, that's easy. Yeah, okay. It's easy. You say that now because you're not taking the test. And those are the things that you'll generally see in each week. And we will spend time going over them more in detail because I won't have to do an hour and a half. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? Nope. Okay. So now I want to talk to you for about a half an hour. So that means it's going to put me about 15 minutes after. And I want to tell you why adversity to springboard to success is my motto. And please, guys, hang in there. Now, I give you a key phrase, but I have to do it after you hear this. And the reason why is because I want others to hear it before they get this. Because this is important for learning the kind of person that I am and why I am, and the kind of person that you have teaching you. This all started when I was 7 years old and my dad had taken me to a baseball game. We came home Memorial Day of 1957. I was 7 years old, living on the west side of Chicago. And my dad and I came home, and I had 5 younger sisters at that time. We were put to bed, and a fight broke out in the house. Well, the fight broke out because a guy who was a roomer in the house, renting a room, and my dad had words. I would later find out it was because he suspected my mom and this guy were having an affair. So he confronted the guy, and the fight ended up in the bedroom where I and my 5 younger sisters were. Well, the man uh, got my dad in a corner. The light was flicked on, and he stabbed my dad in the forehead with a knife. I remember it like it happened yesterday because I have a photographic memory. So only way I could do it is if I got Alzheimer's or somebody did a lobotomy on me. So the guy stabbed him, and then he ran out of the house. The police came in. They took my dad's body out with the blood pouring down still out of his head. I remember it like it happened yesterday. Whenever I see movies with Jesus Christ on the cross and the blood streaming down with the lines, that's the way my dad's blood was flowing. So I always remember that. And then finally, um, a few days later, the guy shows back up in the house. So I'm 7. My younger sisters were all in that room, and we were close to stair steps, so they didn't really understand what was going on. So the guy shows back up in the house, and he begins now sleeping not in his room, but in the room with my mother openly. And we didn't understand that, so we buried my dad. And the next period from 57 to 62, we lived in that house where my mom was the victim of domestic violence. She was beaten profusely, the way Tina Turner was and What's Love Got to Do with It, the way that, what's the woman's name who was, um, she was part of that three group of police females. I can't remember her name, but anyway, The Burning Bed. It was a movie, old movie, and uh, she was beaten seriously. So my mom was beaten like that, and I used to see it, and my sisters did. So it was pretty rough, pretty bad. The guy would go to jail, and my mom would go back and get him and bring him back home. And so um, oh, and by the way, the person who turned on the light that day was my mother. And the reason why the guy didn't go to jail was because the case was dismissed because they said there was no evidence. And my mother said that my dad was the aggressor because she was in love with this guy. So anyway, this guy, um, beat her profusely in front of us kids, and she kept bringing him back. He'd go to jail, she'd go get him back out and bring him home. And it continued on uh, to 62. The area where we lived became pretty bad. It had changed, and the gangs were involved. And there were two major gangs, the Vice Lords and Cobras. They made an interesting agreement not to try to recruit me because they knew what happened with me with my dad, and so I was off limits. But my mom decided that it was time to go, and we moved from that house, which we owned on the first floor of the house on the west side. And we moved to Gary, Indiana, which at that time Gary was had a pretty nice community area called Terrytown. So we moved there in 1962 in the summer. And when we moved there, it was a nice area. They had Little League. Uh, we had green grass and everything. And it was a single family house. The other house we lived in was a two flat that my mom owned. And so anyway, at that time we moved there. An aunt came from Michigan and stayed with us. So she was pretty tough. She was like the character that Tyler Perry created called Medea. She carried a gun in her purse. And so this guy didn't do anything to my mom while she was there. And so we continued living in that house. By the way, my mom, at that time, she had two more girls who were born after my father was killed and that were fathered by this man. So thus there were seven girls and me. This was the first time I had my own bedroom when we were living in Gary. So my mom got together with a cousin and Gary that got us to come to stay together in Gary and operated a restaurant in downtown Gary. So we go ahead and we move forward to 63 around Memorial Day of 63. Oh, about March of 63, my aunt left to go back to be with her husband in Michigan. And so came to Memorial Day of 63, we had a gathering in the house. And so my mom left me in charge of the house and, told me to take care of the kids and so forth and so on as the oldest. And we all went to bed. Well, I woke up early the next morning and smoke was in the house. So I let the smoke out of the house. And when I let the smoke out, I looked out in the driveway and I saw the car pull away that my mother and this guy, his name was Scott, Webster Scott, was in. And so it- he didn't see me. I'm sure he didn't see me because of what I'm going to tell you next. So they pulled away. So I opened up the oven and then there was barbecue that was burned in the oven. So what happened is that he had turned on the oven to kill us, and the barbecue gave it away. So anyway, he left with my mom. I went and looked in her room, and I saw her bed hadn't been slept in, but that wasn't unusual because she did that a lot of times. So she ended up going to the restaurant, and the next day, what's that, early that morning when I let the smoke out, or I call it next day, but actually later that day, two gentlemen showed up at the house, announced themselves as police officers, and they announced that my mom had been found dead in Chicago. And I started yelling this guy's name and lost it. And then all of a sudden I looked around and I realized I'm what all of those kids have left. I was only 13 years old. I had turned 13 May 3rd. So this was Memorial Day. And by the way, Memorial Day during that period was celebrated actually on the 30th itself. So it was the 30th of May that my mom last was seen alive. And it was the 31st when the police showed up at the house to announce that she had been found dead. So we were in that house, and the next thing I knew, an aunt, one of my mother's sisters, not the one from Michigan, but another sister of hers came and took us to her house. She told us we were going to stay there temporarily while they figure out how they were going to do it, but the plan was to split us up. Well, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. And so we lived with that, and she made us clean up the house. We were like servants. Her kids could go to YMCA, but we weren't given that privilege. So anyway, it was pretty hectic, people. So I found myself in a situation where my other aunt came back from Michigan when she found out what was going to happen with splitting us up, and she said that she wasn't going to allow that to happen. And she said, I'm going to keep these kids, her and her husband had a house built in the further south side of Chicago called the Morgan Park area called Maple Park. And we moved into that house in 1963. I'm sorry, no. My mom was killed in 63, 64, because I did sixth grade, or rather seventh grade at the school in Chicago, school called Dixon on the south side. So then we moved, and when we got to the house in 64, I found out several things as I turned 14. First of all, I discovered that Scott had pled guilty, that he was going to be sentenced to 10 years. Now, 10 years for killing two people, well, like I said again, it was basically based upon killing my mother. But then it was brought to my attention that 10 meant 5 because of good behavior. And it was further brought to my attention that for good behavior in prison, he could serve 3.5 years, which ultimately is what he did. So I was very disturbed when I found out that he could potentially serve 3.5 years. And it just threw me for a loop. I was already in a bad situation. By the way, living with my uncle and aunt wasn't a bargain because my uncle and I didn't get along because he wanted me to take his name. I didn't want to take his name with no disrespect to him, but because I was the only male that I could carry on my dad's name. In fact, my name was Richard, as I was named after him, not a junior, because my middle name was different. But at any rate, I was in the situation where I found this out. And I began to ask people, what, this doesn't seem fair, it doesn't seem right. Then finally someone brought to my attention these people called lawyers or attorneys. And so the only attorney that I knew of at that time was a guy I'd seen on TV called Perry Mason, and Raymond Burr played that character. And so I went to school and I asked the librarian, do we have any books? And I was in eighth grade concerning lawyers or attorneys. They had one little book that I was able to check out, took home and read it cover to cover that night. People, the next day, anybody I met, this 14-year-old kid, who, by the way, a 14-year-old kid, and during those days was a little kid. I said, my name is Richard Wright to anyone that I didn't know, I met, and I'm going to be a lawyer. Immediately after I started saying those words, I got met with resistance. I was told at school that it was probably, well, no, they didn't tell me in grammar school. They waited until I got in high school and then found out what I wanted to do. And I was told that I probably wouldn't be able to do that. So anyway, the point of the matter is that I also had family members, and one of those family members was that lady who was my aunt who wanted to split us up. She thought that no, I didn't have what it took because she know where I came from. But I never told her that I was going to do it. And I tell students, don't tell somebody you're going to do something. The 3 words that Nike said, just do it. So I uh, proceeded to find my life in a situation where I was in a pretty bad situation. By having trouble with my aunt and uncle, and the aunt, the trouble was is that my uncle was running it, and she, let him do what he wanted to do. I would find out years and years later that this man was actually sexually assaulting some of my sisters. So it was pretty bad, people. By the way, I told you she was like Medea and she had her guns. He had his rifles. And there were times when they were pulled out and we were right there in the house. So it was pretty bad. There was a lot of cussing and drinking and stuff like that. But it was bad. So I spent a lot of time outside the house. I heard this lady that I liked on the radio and I liked her voice, so I went and found her and asked her to be my mother. She laughed and she became my friend. And then years later, by the way, just spinning ahead, after I was a lawyer, um, she legally adopted me, and my name was became my dad's name again. The reason why I said that is because I would find out later in '84 that my aunt and uncle had actually done something illegal. They adopted me without my knowledge, and apparently they had someone else to go in and stand in my place to agree to it. And so I never used the name. When I graduated from high school, I graduated with Richard Wright. So it was pretty tough. Well, in the neighborhood, I got involved with different people in the community. I had a lot of surrogate connections. I spent time at the church, and the pastor and a couple of the church officials approached my aunt and uncle and told them near the time when it was time for me to graduate, because during the time I was in school, I stopped sports. I was involved in basketball and baseball, and football for about a down. But anyway, the point of the matter is that I had to get a job. So I had a job first delivering newspapers, and then later working as a grillman at McDonald's, cooking burgers and fries and things and fish and all of that. So anyway, I came to the point where they, from the church, approached my aunt and uncle and told them that they were willing to give me a paid scholarship to go to college. All that they required was a signature for them to. My aunt wouldn't do it because he wouldn't let her. So I announced at this time, after having been going through so many changes from high school, I was in my senior year. I said, I'm done with this. When I get 19, I'm going to move out, which is when I graduated in 1969. I also said I was going to go to a junior college because I didn't care if nobody helped me or not. So it came time for me to graduate, and I graduated. And I ended up, one of my friends, um, he asked his mom and dad if I could come and stay with them, and I did. I stayed with them, and then I went to school at night. Well, they also got me a job working at a big law firm in the mailroom. And when I got there, I started working there, going to school at night, carrying a full load. Uh, and so I found myself in a situation where it was pretty tough still. So I was working full time, carrying 12 hour courses. That's 4 courses. Sometimes I had 3, but most time it was 4. And I worked during the day. I traveled on the bus in the L, and I had to be at work at 8:30, and then I got out of school off of work at 4 and had to be in class at 4:30 to 10 o'clock. And I did that. And I stayed on the honor roll, dean's list. I got involved in student government at the school. I was active in that. And so in the meantime, backtracking, in 1970, a year after I graduated and was in school, I got married. And when I got married, then in 1971, here comes child number 1 is a girl. Child number 2 is a girl. And so I found myself in that pretty tough situation. But we had hardly any money. In fact, I remember sleeping on a mattress, and we had boxes for a kitchen table. We had a little small TV. And so, anyway, the bottom line was we went through a whole lot. And so, anyway, she went to school, came to study for a teacher, and I was in school studying pre-law at the junior high school called Loop College, which is called Harold Washington in Chicago now, City College of Chicago. So I found myself in that situation. So I was still dealing with some tough situations. Well, on my way, moving along, the law firm, when I got there, I let them know the same thing I said, as I told you earlier. Anybody I met, I introduced myself and told them I was going to be a lawyer. I used to go to work every day, and I would wear a suit, not a suit, but a shirt and tie. Back those days, it was white shirt, not blue or any other colors like now. And I used to dress like that. And so I took packages to various people. One of the people I got a chance to meet was Ray Kroc. For those of you who don't know that name, he was the chairman and founder of McDonald's, and he took an interest in me. And so I would deliver mail and packages to various people, and including Mr. Kroc. And then the law firm decided they would promote me to a file clerk. And then they promoted me to a law librarian. Something happened to the law librarian, and so I took that job. Well, when I got the job, my job was to file books away. And so I was on my way. So I found myself listening to the lawyers and then studying the materials that I was working with to learn how to write memos, briefs, and conduct research. In fact, I demonstrated to them that I knew how to conduct research. And then they moved me into what's called a law clerk. Now it's called paralegal. And I did that several years. So in the meantime, I left the junior college and went to a four-year institution registered called Roosevelt University with a major in political science and a minor in accounting. And so I was active in organizations at the school. I did radio while I was at the school as well, spinning records and things of that nature. So I was active. Once again, I'm still operating without a car. So in the meantime, it came time for me to decide what school I was going to go to for law, where I already knew where I wanted to go. And I made it known Northwest University School of Law was where I was going to go. I took the law LSAT, which I didn't do too well. And incidentally, for your own information, as we speak now, more and more schools are doing away with that as a criteria for admitting people because it didn't really measure anything. So anyway, the point of the matter is that I continued my quest, and I applied to Northwestern University School of Law. When I did that, that same aunt came back, the one that told me I couldn't do it. She says, "Do you know how high you're aiming?" And I says, "Well, that's the school I'm going to," and I left it alone. Well, I put together my application, and the applications were about 6 pages, but when I submitted my package, it was really thick. It contained samples of writing and things about myself as well. So when I shared that information and sent it to the law school by one of the lawyers who was an adjunct, or as they called it, um, um, visiting chair. Anyway, he taught courses there. I got a call from Northwest University Law School inviting me to come because they wanted to see who was behind that package. Well, they had in their material that they didn't do interviews because they had 250 students that they were going to admit, and that there were thousands of applications. But how many of you know I was confident that I was going to get one of those 250 seats? And so I wasn't arrogant or cocky, I was just confident. So at any rate, I found myself in a situation where I went to the school for the session, sat in a room with these people, and they asked me questions about the material, and I answered them. And then they adjourned and came back to me, and they said, "Well, we are impressed with you. We think that you're really going to be a good uh, lawyer in the future." They said, "But we don't make decisions based on this." They said, "But what we will share with you is that we will be sending you some correspondence in the next few weeks that we believe that will make you happy." That was their informal way of telling me I was accepted into Northwestern University School of Law. I still got that acceptance in a notebook. And I got accepted. So I started school, graduated from Roosevelt in 1975 with my degree in honors. I was written up in the newspapers. I was enshrined, and even today, in what's called a Lincoln Academy down in Springfield. The governor gave me a medal, and I had dinner at the governor's mansion, and all those lunch at the governor's mansion, and it was something. My first wife, she ended up graduating from um, from Chicago State and became a teacher. So I started classes. One of the things that, and the law firm was excited and happy for me. One of the things that I found out from the law school is that I could not work in my first year because they didn't believe in that. So I had to leave my job, and that left the only source of income was the teaching job that my first wife had. So we found ourselves operating with that, and it was pretty tight, but we were doing all right. By this time, I had gotten a little car. You remember the people I was living with before I got married? Uh, the man sold me his car, and I paid him like $25 a month for $300, and I had that car. Uh, so at any rate, um, I was hanging in there with classes, and then I found myself in a situation where something happened that really made it more complicated. The teachers that year went on strike. They had not been on strike for years. And then guess what? That meant all of a sudden no more income. So here I was in school already in a challenging program in my first year, first semester, and it just became really difficult. A lot of pressure on me. So I found myself going to one of my professors. Her name was Joyce Hughes. I told her I was going to be taking a leave because of what happened, and she said, "Meet me at my office and talk to me about it." So I did. After class, I met her, and we sat in the office, and she stood in front of the door, and I'll never forget these words. She says, "You're going to stick this out. You're not getting out of this office until you agree that you're going to go ahead and finish this course, finish the program." She says, "Because you're pretty smart." So don't let yourself be intimidated by these people. Don't let yourself feel like you can't do it. So she was adamant about it. By the way, she's still at the school right now teaching, and I go back to visit her sometime. If you ever look at my Facebook page, then you'll see her pictures on there with me. Her hair is white now, excuse me, and she's walking with a cane, but she's still there helping students. So I ended up sticking the course out. It was tough. We lost electricity, so I had to study by candlelight. Ran out of money for food. It was tough. It was tough, but I still continued and pushed my way through. And so during the course of going there, I met a gentleman who was the father to one of my classmates. His name was R. Eugene Pincham. He was a lawyer and later became a judge. Judge Pincham um, heard my story because I would go to his house with his son, along with other lawyers, future lawyers at that time, and we sat around his kitchen table and we would talk. And then after they left, I told him my story, and he said, "You need closure." So he helped me get closure. But he also gave me some advice. He says, "When you graduate," he says, "you might tend to want to be a prosecutor." He said, "But be a defense lawyer. You'll learn more about the system." So I respected him. And so I made up my mind that when it came time to graduate, what direction I was going to go in. Now, of course, the law firm I had worked for gave me a chance to come back and work for them during the summers. Except one summer, I went to another law firm to see if it was any different. And so I did corporate law there, and I worked on clients like Jerry Reinsdorf. If you know that name, yes, he owns the Bulls and the Sox. And I worked on a lot of corporate type stuff. Well, I didn't like corporate law. So I went back to the law firm when I graduated in 78. And then I decided to stay there 2 years. 2 years later in 80, I left. And I began to work with these other lawyers, but I didn't like their ethics. So I decided then to start my own practice. Well, the lady that I told you, who her name was Mary D. She was always still in my life. She wasn't legally my mom, but she was always there to help me. And so, anyway, when I left the law firm, I started my own practice um, on my kitchen table. By the way, a third child came, and she was born the same year I graduated, 1978, and it was a girl. So I had three girls. So anyway, it was pretty tight. The first year, I think I made $5,000, but it was a challenge. So I ended up growing from that point, and my practice took off because I started doing radio. Created a show called Know Your Rights, which was spelled with a WRIGHTS. My phone number was 974-4487, which spelled WRIGHTS. And I became very popular on various radio stations, and so my practice grew. In the meantime, my ex-wife, my first wife, and I separated. We went in different directions, and I ended up getting married again, and married a second person in '88, and she was a former client, and I ended up going to her church and joining her church. And when I got to that church, I was introduced to these three words as their church motto: God is able. And so that began to guide my life and direct me, and to take me in a direction to lead me to where I am today. So I found myself in that situation, that marriage. This young lady's mother became the village president or mayor of a tough town called Ford Heights, which is a south suburb. And so she asked me to be her village attorney. And I said, okay. I took the job. I said, but I wanted to carry a gun. She said, you'd have to be a police officer. So I said, if I do it part time without pay, because I know you all don't have the money, can I do that? And they paid for the training. So I did that. I became a part-time police officer. I worked in drug raids. I worked on roadblocks, and but I never wore a uniform. I always wore plain clothes. So I found myself doing that, 89 to 93. So I would find out in 93 that my ex-wife and the man who married us, who was the pastor of that church, and her were having an affair. So you know what that did to me. It devastated me. So I found myself saying, this is not good. So I was at the point where I said, you know what, this is not fair, not right. So I, you know, ended up um, going to spend some time at a bookstore. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do drugs and none of that stuff. I was out there when I was younger with the ladies, but I was done with all of that stuff. I was focusing on God, and I started doing radio at a Christian radio station. And I found myself um, where I went to this bookstore, and there was a young lady working there, and I kind of knew her a little bit. We met at the bookstore. Excuse me. So, little short part of it, we became friends, and this young lady and I became real good friends, and we started dating each other. She had gone through something in her first marriage. She was 29 and I was 44. And so we decided, by the way, with my second marriage, I had one daughter too. So I had nothing but girls. And so I found myself in a tough situation. So anyway, the point of the matter is that so I met this young lady, and she and I started dating, and we got married in 1994, July the 28th. And she and I became really close. Um, we ended up, I ended up deciding in 2000 to retire from being a lawyer, and I began teaching special education. I began teaching special education, and working and doing closings for a title company. I did janitorial work for a while where I ran a janitorial company for a company called Service Merchandise. So I did all of those different things. Well, that went on. Um, and then so in my wife and I then had one son. I finally got a boy. We just celebrated his 25th birthday on yesterday, the 12th. And so I found myself in a situation where then the next thing I know, we got a boy, no, a girl first, and then another boy, and then in 2008, a baby girl. She is, you see him on that the picture there. So anyway, I found myself in this situation. So we ended up this. My wife lost her mom, so she wanted to move out of the area where we were living in an area called Richton Park. We had a house built from the ground up there, and she and I were at the church that her mother and father had started, and so we ended up moving away uh, to an area, Plainfield area, and someone came to me with this opportunity to come to this school that I had never heard of to teach business law, and that's called Rasmussen College. And I found out about it. I did my research, and I found out that um, that made it credible to me was the chairman of the board was a guy by the name of Dr. Henry Beenan. He was formerly president, not of Northwestern Law School, but of Northwestern University. So I found myself at that point where I ended up, uh, you know, taking that job. Now, I had a distinguished law career. I was very good with criminal cases, especially. I was high in the 90 percentile in terms of not guilty verdicts. I knew how to tell the story as I do now and lay it out to the jury. And I represented many kinds of people. I did entertainment law, I did sports law, I did criminal law was my passion, I did church law. And so I found myself radio and TV um, with the lady. She legally adopted me. And what happened with that is she helped me get back my legal name of Richard Wright. And her name is Mary D. And she's still alive now. And I see her periodically. I don't see her as much as I have in the past. So anyway, my wife and I got married, my third wife, and we got these kids. And I took the job at Rasmussen as an adjunct professor. And then I stayed there, continuing to work residentially at the Romeoville campus, moved out to Plainfield, and we found ourselves in various places during that period where we moved from Plainfield to Shorewood, rented a house, and then to Romeoville to rent an apartment. And then finally, last year, November 8th, we bought the house that we're in now. So, anyway, during that period, I ended up becoming a full-time employee of Rasmussen teaching criminal justice. In my second quarter at the school, I let it be known to them that I was a criminal justice person, not a business law person, and they moved me into that program. In that first quarter, in January of 2012, I taught domestic violence with residentially. Well, eventually, what happened is that the criminal justice program moved completely online, and in 2014, it was online. So I was doing an adjunct professor, teaching various classes, working with students, helping students, making connections with students. And so, anyway, I found myself in 2014 with an opportunity to become full time and applied for what they call the state program coordinator of School of Justice Studies. And I would be responsible for all of the schools in Illinois, which are four: Romeoville, Mokina, Mokina Tinley Park is the second one, Aurora, and then Rockford was the fourth one. And so I did that job for a couple of years, and then about a year and a half maybe, and then they changed it, and then they turned me into professor teaching more classes, for 5 classes. And so since that time, I've been working at Rasmussen, involved in a lot of different activities. I was faculty member chosen to participate in the Higher Learning Commission for the accreditation for the school. I just did that a few weeks ago. I'm involved in the diversity and inclusion program. I've been involved in anything that helps students to be successful. And so here I am, still operating, and I'm here to be of service to my students. And so I wanted you to learn that story and know that there was a challenge that I had gone through in life. And so I want you to understand that it is always important for you never to hold on a second to doubt yourself and believe and know that you can be successful and that adversity is a springboard to success, and I'm living proof of that. And so with that, I'm going to give you a key word, and that key word is nope, it's not what you think it is. It is not what you think it is. The key word is criminal law. Give me that, and you'll get your points for this week. A lot of people thought I was going to say adversity because I've done that in the past. But nope, this time I told you what it was. I'm not going to repeat it again. So with that, I'm going to say good night to you guys. I'm sorry I went a little longer. Any questions? Wow. I see. Wow, that happened to me. That's what Brother Presley's saying. Kara says you have a few times in the past. Yes, you use adversity. Yeah, you know that, don't you? Okay. Well, I'm going to say good night to you guys. And you know what the key phrase is. Put it in, get your points, and you know what the assignments are for the week. I'll see you next Tuesday at 8:30, and we'll usually be done by 9:30 or close to that. So I'm going to say good night to you. Stay safe out there in this pandemic, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Good night.